Porsche Penske Motorsport No. 7 car became the 62nd winner at the Rolex 24 history and ended a streak of 21 years without a Porsche overall victory, and was also the first win for Roger Penske since 1969. And let's check now all the Rolex 24 winners from 1966 until 2024, when the 24 hours format was done. In 1966, when was the first time that 24 Hours of Daytona was performed, the winner was Shelby American Incorporated team with Ken Miles and Lloyd Ruby as the drivers with a Ford GT40 Mk2. This fact was shown recently in the Ford vs. Ferrari movie released in 2019. In 1967, when it was the second edition, the winner was the Spa Ferrari Cefac team with Lorenzo Bandini and Chris Amon as the drivers with a Ferrari 330 P4. It was a very important win for Ferrari after being defeated by Ford at the 1966 edition of 24 Hours of Le Mans. In 1968, the winner was the Porsche System Engineering team with Vic Elford, Johan Neerpasch, Rolf Stomlin, Joe Siffert and Hans Hermann as the drivers with Porsche 907 LH. It was the first time that Porsche won a 24 Hours of Daytona. In 1969, the team winner was Roger Penske Sunoco Racing with Mark Donohue and Chuck Parson as the drivers. The car used was a Lola T70 Mk.3B Chevrolet. It was until then the only victory for Roger Penske at 24 Hours of Daytona. In 1970, JW Engineering won the race in Daytona with a Porsche 917K with Pedro Rodriguez, Leo Kinnunen and Brian Redman as the drivers. In 1971, once again JW Engineering won the 24 Hours of Daytona with Porsche 917K. Pedro Rodriguez and Jackie Oliver were the drivers. In 1972, because of an FIA rule, the race was shortened to a 6 hours race. So we won't consider this year because this was not a 24-hour race. In 1973, the 24-hour race was held again. The team winner was Brumos Porsche with Peter Gregg and Hurley Haywood. The car used was a Porsche Carrera RSR. In 1974, due to the energy crisis with the rise in oil prices, the 24 Hours of Daytona was not held. In 1975, the 24 Hours of Daytona was held again, and once more Brumos Porsche with Peter Gregg and Hurley Haywood was the winner. The car used was again a Porsche Carrera RSR. Besides being part of World Championship for makes, it was the first time that this race was part of the IMSA GT Championship. In 1976, BMW of North America with 3.0 CSL car was the winner with Peter Gregg, Brian Redman and John Fitzpatrick as the drivers. It's until now the only BMW overall victory at the 24 Hours of Daytona. In this edition, the 24 Hours of Daytona was part only for the IMSA GT Championship. So here comes the Porsche's great winning streak at Daytona. In the 1977 edition, Écurie Escargot was the team winner with Hurley Haywood, John Graves and Dave Helmick as the drivers. The car used was a Porsche Carrera RSR. In this year, the 24 Hours of Daytona returned to the World Championship for makes besides the IMSA GT Championship. Now the 1978 edition. Once more Brumos Porsche was the team winner and the drivers were Peter Gregg, Rolf Stomlin and Toyn Huysmans. This time the car used was a Porsche 935/77. The first of 6 winning streaks with a 935, which is considered as a legendary car in the Porsche history. In 1979, Interscope Racing won the race with Hurley Haywood, Ted Field and Danny Ongais as the drivers, and they used a Porsche 935/79 car. In 1980, one more victory with a Porsche 935 car but with AJ version. The team winner was LNM Joest Racing and the drivers were Rolf Stomlin, Volkert Merle and Reinhold Joest. In 1981, Garrettson Racing Style Auto won the 24 Hours of Daytona with a Porsche 935 K3 version. Bobby Rahal, Brian Redman and Bob Garrettson were the drivers. This was the last time that 24 Hours of Daytona was part of the World Endurance Championship. From the 1982 edition and beyond, the 24 Hours of Daytona was only part of the IMSA GT Championship. On that occasion, the winner was JLP Racing with Porsche 935 JLP3. The drivers were John Paul Sr., John Paul Jr. and Rolf Stomlin. In 1983, who won the 24 Hours of Daytona was Hen's Swap Shop Racing Team with a Porsche 935L. The drivers were A.J. Foyt, Preston Hen, Bob Woolek and Claude Balatlina. This was the last victory with a Porsche 935 car. In 1984 the winner was the Creepy Crowley Racing Team with Cyril van der Merwe, Tony Martin and Graham Duxbury as the drivers. The car used was a March 83 G Porsche. Besides being an engine supplier, this does not count as a Porsche victory at the 24 Hours of Daytona race. In 1985 Porsche won again with Hen's Swap Shop Racing, but this time with a legendary 962 car which made history during the Group C and GTP era. The drivers were A.J. Foyt, Bob Woolek, Alonso Sr. and Thierry Boutsen. In 1986, Lowenbrow Holbert Racing also with a Porsche 962 won the 24 Hours of Daytona with Al Holbert, Derek Bell, Alonso Jr. In 1987, once again Lowenbrow Holbert Racing won at Daytona also with a Porsche 962. And about the drivers lineup, the only difference is the addition of Chip Robinson with the 1986 winner drivers. In 1988, if we consider that Porsche won in 1984 as an engine supplier, Jaguar finally ended the Stuttgart manufacturer's winning streak at Daytona. Castrol Jaguar Racing TWR was the team winner with Raul Boesel, Martin Brundle, John Nielsen and Jan Lammers as the drivers. The car used was a Jaguar XJR9. After losing in 1988, Porsche won again in 1989 with the 962 car thanks to the Miller BF Goodrich Busby Racing Team. The drivers were John Andretti, Derek Bell and Bob Woolek. In 1990, once again Jaguar was able to defeat Porsche at the 24 Hours of Daytona, but this time with a XJR12D car. Davy Jones, Jan Lammers and Andy Wallace were the drivers. In 1991, we had the last victory of Porsche for 12 years with Joest Racing Team with a 962C car. Hurley Haywood, John Winter, Frank Ulinski, Henri Pescarolo and Bob Woolek were the drivers. In 1992, Nissan got its first win at the 24 Hours of Daytona with the R91 CP car with Masahiro Hasumi, Kazuyoshi Hoshino and Toshio Suzuki. In 1993 it was Toyota's turn to win the Rolex 24 race with the All-American Racers team with an Eagle Mk3 car. The drivers were P.J. Jones, Mark Dismore and Rocky Moran. In 1994, once again Nissan won but with a 300ZX car by Cunningham Racing Team and Paul Gentilozzi, Scott Pruitt, Butch Leitzinger and Steve Millen. And the most curious thing is that the winning car was not a prototype but a GT spec. And this happened because 1994 was the first season after the end of GTP cars, which were replaced by the World Sports Car class which had open cockpit prototypes. In 1995 was the first win of an LMWSC car with Kramer Racing with a prototype Kramer K8 powered by Porsche. Jürgen Lassig, Christoph Bouchet, Giovanni Lavaggi and Marco Werner were the drivers. In the 1996 edition, we had the first win for a Riley prototype car in 24 Hours of Daytona history. Doyle Racing with Wayne Taylor, Scott Sharp and Jim Pace as the drivers, was the winner with a Riley and Scott Mk3 powered by Oldsmobile engine. In 1997, we had the record of most drivers winning in an overall position with 7 in total. Dyson Racing was the winner with a Riley and Scott Mk3 but powered by Ford. Rob Dyson, James Weaver, Butch Leitzinger, Andy Wallace, John Paul Jr., Elliott Forbes Robinson and John Schneider were the drivers. And this was the last time that the 24 Hours of Daytona was part of the IMSA GT Championship. In the 1998 edition, it was the last time that Ferrari won the 24 Hours of Daytona in an overall position with the prototype 333 SP operated by Doran Moretti Racing Team. Mauro Baldi, Ari Luyendik, Giampiero Moretti and Didier Thays were the drivers. From 1998, the 24 Hours of Daytona started to be part of the U.S. Road Racing Championship, which was an alternative of IMSA GT Championship, which was replaced by American Le Mans Series from 1999 but supported by ACO. In 1999, once more Dyson Racing won the 24 Hours of Daytona with a Riley and Scott Mk3 powered by Ford. Again Elliott Forbes Robinson, Butch Leitzinger and Andy Wallace were driving for them. In 2000, we had the only time that Dodge won the 24 Hours of Daytona in an overall position. On that occasion, Viper Team Orica won with a Dodge Viper GTSR with Olivier Beretta, Dominique Dupuis and Karl Wendlinger. This race marked the beginning of the Rolex sports car series. In 2001 it was the Corvette's turn to win the 24 Hours of Daytona in an overall position with the C5R car. Ron Fellows, Chris Neifel, Frank Freon and Johnny O'Connell were the drivers. In 2002, we had a prototype car winning again thanks to the Doran Lista Racing team with a Dallara SP1 powered by Judd. The drivers were Didier Thays, Freddie Lienhard, Max Pappas and Mauro Baldi. In the 2003 edition we had a curious winner with the Racers Group team winning in an overall position using a Porsche 911 GT3 RS with Kevin Buckler, Michael Schramm, Timo Bernhard and Jorg Bergmeister as the drivers. This is curious because it was a GT winning the race which had the debut of Daytona prototypes as the top class. And this happened because all the Daytona prototype cars had frequent mechanical issues during the race. It was until then the last time that Porsche won at Daytona overall position. In 2004, we had the first time that a Daytona prototype car won the race. Bell Motorsports was the winner using a Doran JE4 prototype powered by Pontiac engine. The drivers were Christian Fittipaldi, Terry Borchler, Forrest Barber and Andy Pilgrim. In 2005, it was Sintrust Racing's turn to win the 24 Hours of Daytona using a Riley Mk11 Pontiac, marking the beginning of a long winning streak of Riley prototype cars. Max Angelelli, Wayne Taylor and Emmanuel Collard were the drivers. In 2006, it was the first time that Chip Ganassi won the 24 Hours of Daytona and they used a Riley Mk11 powered by Lexus. The duo Indy 500 winners Scott Dixon and Dan Weldon and a former NASCAR driver Casey Mears were driving for Chip Ganassi team. In 2007, once again Chip Ganassi won at Daytona and also using a Riley Mk11 Lexus, but this time the drivers were Juan Pablo Montoya, Salvador Duran and Scott Pruitt. In 2008, Chip Ganassi team was also the winner at Daytona using a Riley Mk11 Lexus and the drivers were Juan Pablo Montoya, Dario Franchitti, Scott Pruitt and Memo Rojas. In 2009, after 31 years, Brumos Racing finally won at 24 Hours of Daytona with a Riley Mk11 also but powered by Porsche, which was Brumos' partner in another 3 victories in history. David Donahue, Antonio Garcia, Darren Law and Buddy Rice were the drivers. In 2010, once again a Riley Mk11 powered by Porsche was the winner, but this time the team was the Action Express Racing. Joao Barbosa, Terry Borchler, Ryan Dalziel and Mike Rockenfeller were the drivers. In the 2011 edition, Chip Ganassi won again the 24 Hours of Daytona but now with a Riley Mk20 powered by BMW. Joey Hand, Graham Rahal, Scott Pruitt and Memo Rojas are the drivers. In 2012, the team winner was Michael Shank Racing using a Riley Mk26 powered by Ford. The drivers were AJ Allmendinger, Osvaldo Negri, John Pugh and Justin Wilson. In 2013, we had the 5th Chip Ganassi victory at Daytona with a Riley Mk26 BMW. The drivers were Juan Pablo Montoya, Charlie Kimball, Scott Pruitt and Memo Rojas. That was the last time that 24 Hours of Daytona was held by the Rolex Sports Car Series before the merge with the American Le Mans Series. In 2014, Action Express was the winner with Coyote Corvette DP. Joao Barbosa, Christian Fittipaldi and Sebastian Bourdais were the drivers. It was the first edition that the 24 Hours of Daytona was held by IMSA since 1997 after the merge between the Rolex Sports Car Series and American Le Mans Series. In 2015, we had the 6th and the last time that Chip Ganassi Racing won at the overall position in Daytona. The car used was a Riley Mk26 Ford and was the last time that a Daytona prototype won the Rolex 24 race. Scott Dixon, Tony Kanaan, Kyle Larson and Jamie McMurray were the drivers. In 2016, Tequila Patron ESM was the team winner of the 24 Hours of Daytona with a Ligier JS-P2 Honda, which was an LMP2 prototype. Ed Brown, Johannes van Overbeek, Scott Sharp and Pipo Derani were the drivers. In 2017, Wayne Taylor Racing won the race with Cadillac DPI VR. Max Angelelli, Jeff Gordon, Jordan Taylor and Ricky Taylor were the drivers. This edition marked the beginning of DPI era at IMSA. In 2018, we again had a Cadillac DPI car winning at Daytona, but the team was Mustang Sampling Racing by Action Express with Joao Barbosa, Felipe Albuquerque and Christian Fittipaldi as the drivers. In 2019, once more the Cadillac DPI car won the race by Wayne Taylor Racing with Jordan Taylor, Fernando Alonso, Ringer van der Zande and Kamui Kobayashi as the drivers. This only happened because the race was shortened by 2 hours due to the heavy rain at Daytona. In 2020, one more time Wayne Taylor Racing won the 24 Hours of Daytona with the Cadillac DPI car. The drivers were Ryan Briscoe, Scott Dixon, Kamui Kobayashi and Ringer van der Zande. And this is the last time that Cadillac won the Rolex 24 race. In 2021 we had the first victory for Acura with the ARX-05 DPI car thanks to Wayne Taylor Racing. The winning drivers were Felipe Albuquerque, Helio Castroneves, Alexander Rossi and Ricky Taylor. In 2022, one more win to Acura ARX-05, but this time because of Meyer Shank Racing. The drivers were Tom Blomqvist, Oliver Jarvis, Helio Castroneves and Simon Pagenaud. This was the last victory for a DPI prototype. In 2023, when the new GTP era began, Meyer Shank Racing was considered as the official winner besides the controversial victory because of tire pressure manipulation which cost the prizes and the loss of 200 points. The car used was an Acura ARX-06 and Tom Blomqvist, Colin Braun, Helio Castroneves and Simon Pagenaud were the drivers. And finally in 2024, after 21 years without a victory at Daytona, the winner was Porsche Penske Motorsport with the 963 LMDH car. And it's also the first victory for Roger Penske since 1969. Felipe Nasser, Dane Cameron, Joseph Newgarden and Matt Campbell were the drivers. So these are all the 24 Hours of Daytona overall winners in history of the race. Who is your favorite winner? So tell me in the comment sections below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to watch more videos about WC and IMSA. We see you in the next videos.